Welcome in to yet another TheatreQs episode. I, as always, am your host, Nate Wiley, and today's interview is absolutely amazing. But before we get into that, it's time for your theater fun fact. Let's get into it. Mental health affects many famous actors from around the globe, and, according to the University of Minnesota, theater has both positive and negative effects on mental health for both actors and audience members. In fact, in some more serious shows, actors who really internalize their roles can struggle to separate their character from themselves. This can create triggers for both actors and audience members alike. However, the study also said that as audience members, watching a show that deals with mental health, like Next to Normal, a musical about a mother with bipolar disorder, can help them feel less alone while struggling with a mental health issue. Multiple students at a high school in North Carolina said on PBS NewsHour that theater helps them find a community and makes them feel seen and heard, and that it has positively impacted them. I think that's part of the magic of theater. It can cause such different reactions from different people, and can allow audience members and actors to reflect on themselves and relate to characters at a deeper level. Today's guest is an extremely talented actor and singer whose credits include the UK tours of Fisherman's Friends and Spring Awakening, as well as musicals like Eugenius, Usher's The Front of House musical, and others. He was also the first ever British person to play Elder Cunningham in the Book of Mormon and has over 11 years of experience in the theater industry. Joining me to discuss those years and his 70,000 followers on Instagram and TikTok combined, please welcome Dan Buckley. Hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks. I didn't expect to see you there. I was like, I'm going to be early. And there you were, just poised, ready and waiting.
Alright, so jumping right in, for our listeners, introduce yourself and what are some of your greatest hits of your career, some of your favorite achievements?
Well, I am Dan Buckley. I'm an actor working in the UK. I think the biggest hits of my career have probably been the ones that no one's heard of, which might sound a bit contradicting, but I did a show called Dead Simple, which was a play, and for me it was one of the biggest growths I've had as an actor in terms of being able to play something that was really challenging. Other than that, I did a show called Eugenius, which was a little sort of cult hit over here that really kind of informed a lot of growth personally for me. It was a really special time in my career and in my life. And I guess the biggest sort of commercial show I've been involved in was the Book of Mormon, which was one of the most highly anticipated shows to come to the West End for a long time, and was it was a roller coaster, a real roller coaster.
And you did that with some of the actors who were in it here in the US, right?
Yes, so we had Jared and Gavin. Yeah, sorry, I don't know why I blanked on Gav's name there.
No worries. So another, I guess, hit of your career is combined on Instagram and TikTok. You have more than 70,000 followers. So how and when did you start making content on social media, and how has that affected your life and career?
Okay, so I came at it from a totally creative perspective. I wanted to do something that I started, I think, doing silly videos on TikTok first, because that's what the app was for. In my head, it was all about doing silly comedy or just doing relatable videos, or just and having fun. And along the way, I started uploading onto my Instagram, and that's the platform that I think I enjoy uploading to the most.
Okay.
I think I have a much better community over there. I have much more consistent results over there, and results sounds a bit like I'm in this for like numbers and things, and actually I'm really not. There are times where I go, oh, that video didn't perform very well, but I never put it down to what I've done creatively. I always put it down to, well, less people shared it, or the algorithm didn't pick it up quite as swiftly, or put it out there like. And so I'm very good. I've got a very good relationship with that side of it. A lot of people wonder whether I'm strategic, and I'm really not strategic. Apart from making my content niche, that's probably about the only strategy I have. Because I want to do comedy that I know and that I understand. And situational comedy and observational comedy is definitely my bag. So I started on TikTok, and I still upload onto TikTok, and it's great for the most part. But it's way more hit and miss, and it's way more like sometimes you're just like, you feel like you're just pumping content into a void, whereas Instagram feels way more like the people that follow me really, I communicate with them really well. So I always have my DMs open, and I'm always chatting to people, and I feel like I've got a much nicer, nicer community on Instagram for sure.
Do you think that's a trend, like among your friends? Have you noticed that Instagram is a little bit more supportive than some of the other social medias, or?
I just think that I suppose I haven't really. I look at TikTok as more as people will see me on their For You page, whereas Instagram, I feel like people will see me on their feeds and they already follow me. Whereas I know there are people that are constantly seeing my videos that are not following me, and then they do follow me. Like, I know I can see my numbers go up, so I know that. But it just feels like you get much nicer notifications. At least I feel like I get a notification every time someone I don't know shares my stuff, so I can message them and say thank you. And so I think that's maybe why. I think it's because I can directly. I feel like everyone on Instagram has more of a personality, whereas TikTok, I feel like there's just so many. Just, I don't know. It feels more fleeting on TikTok, and it feels less personal, should I say?
Yeah, I first found you scrolling through Instagram Reels, and I think the first video or skit of yours that I watched was the one of the ones were actors hitting the wings.
Sure.
Yeah, and those are
I
all really funny.
They were really great idea, and I managed to sort of drag that on for as long as I possibly could. But there are some series that I do that just don't have that many situations until I start going into a world where it's just made up, and then I just feel like it's not genuine, and it feels disingenuous for sure, and it feels like I'm less creatively fulfilled by it. So there would just happen to be lots and lots of content of what people do going on stage, coming off stage, like what they're doing in that moment before and after the audience see them on stage. And I'm just really grateful that people do enjoy them, and like yourself, and like invite me on here to have a chat, and and following, and it's just, I'm just super grateful because it's just fun. Like, it's good fun. It's nice to feel supported for doing something fun.
Definitely. And on your socials, you have been open about your experiences with mental health and how you're bettering yourself. And I mentioned in the intro to this episode, which I recorded before we started, that mental health can be positively affected by theater. Has that been the case for you?
Yeah, I'm negatively affected. But as a working professional, a lot of negative things have happened. And I think you build that resilience up, and you learn from experience about how you will stand to be treated, and how you will observe and step in when necessary if someone else is being mistreated. But in terms of feeling fulfilled and feeling inspired, and it really is, it's tenfold. Watching shows, watching theatre for me, I love going to the cinema, and I love going to the theatre, although I don't go as much as I go to the cinema, just because accessibility, just me, location wise, where I am in the world, I don't have the West End at my fingertips. When I am down in London, I see shows almost every night I'm down there. Like, I really do commit to that. But that feeling of being in in the theater or in an auditorium and watching something and being transported and just putting your trust and your focus and your energy completely not distracted from your phone or anything like that is really special. It's really, really special, and it's a privilege to be an actor and to be able to provide that for people, but also as a creative to be able to consume that also. It's, it does wonders for me. What I feel like when I get the most stressed out, not stressed, but stressed out. That's a sort of
Mm-hmm.
lesser version of stressed, I would say, about trivial things. The cinema is the place that I go to. I look forward to it and I love the whole experience. I love walking in, I love smelling the popcorn, I love buying popcorn and a bit drink and sitting down and just being able to just switch my phone off and just be for 2 to 3 hours just sitting there enjoying myself. Um, and so I feel like, yeah, absolutely, entertainment has the ability to really improve your mental health, um, whether that is that you relate to a character, whether it's that just the whole production just takes you to another world, whether you're completely inspired by an actor. Like there's so many
Mm-hmm.
valuable things you can take from enjoying theater.
Yeah, that's it's also interesting that you brought up the negative aspects of mental health in theater, because I was reading about there was a study that I can't remember. I'll say later in the outro what it is, but uh, I was reading a study that actors who play more serious roles often, can struggle with sort of distinguishing that role from their own personal life if they really internalize it. Um, have you ever experienced anything like that?
No, um, I feel like I feel like that's a process thing. I feel like that's how some actors, and that's not to say I never will, but a lot of actors may the way they approach something might be very consuming, and
Mm.
that might be the only way that they feel they can play authentically, and that is totally fair enough. Um, I'm a massive advocate for leaving that stuff, leaving that stuff on the stage, and going backstage, going to your dressing room and just letting go, cooling down, getting back in the zone, listening to your own music, chatting to your friends, going for a drink after the show, doing all those things that remind
Mm-hmm.
you, of what of you. Um, but yeah, I feel like I don't think I've ever worked with an actor either who's been that intense. And I don't mean intense negatively. I just mean consumed,
Yeah.
and how that affects them. There are certain aspects of being an actor that can make you feel that way, whether it's a long schedule, a long show, a long contract, or being away from home, or lots of things that can contribute to your mental health negatively. Um, Outside of the practicalities of being an actor, but for sure, I think uh, there will be some actors out there who really consume. I think you hear more about it in the movies, and I
Yeah.
think there's something to be said for that because of the lack of rehearsal time you get with television and film.
Huh.
And I
Interesting.
feel like when you're in theatre, you do have a rehearsal process, whether that's 4 weeks, 8 weeks, or however long the rehearsal process is, to really find the nuances and work through all the little knots that are jarring you until you smooth it all out, until you get to a place where you feel comfortable showing it to the world. And then even then, it does develop, not massively, but it does develop. Whereas you turn up on set, and what they're capturing on film has to be the product. And
Yeah.
there are, I know plenty of actors who do films who do get a nice rehearsal time, and it's more to do with bonding and chemistry and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for the most part, I think there is less detailed rehearsal, um, and so I feel like a lot of actors maybe on film have to consume themselves in a way so that the detail is there. They can rely on so much detail that's in a back catalogue somewhere because they've been living and eating and breathing this character or this
Okay.
situation, you know?
Huh. Yeah. You you mentioned being away from home, and you have been on three or three or four UK tours, right?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
And so most recently, you were in the UK tour of Fisherman's Friends as the role of Rowan. So for the listeners who haven't heard of it, would you mind describing what the show is and what your experience was like on a tour?
Yeah, so this was my first number one tour. I don't know whether you have that phrase over there, but like number one means you go to quite big receiving venues, so quite big houses.
Okay.
So a number one tour would be like going to the biggest venues in most cities. So that was an experience. It was also the longest tour I'd done. It was 9 months. Um,
Oh, wow.
yeah, but 8 weeks of that was in Toronto, which was gorgeous, and we just got to sit in one place, and that was lovely. Um, but yeah, 9 months on tour. The show is it's based. The musical is based on a film, which is based on the true story of a set of fishermen who used to sing sea shanties in Cornwall to raise money for the lifeboats. Over here
Huh.
we have a charity called the RNLI, which is it's a lifeboat charity. So they look after the coast, and if anybody's stranded, there's anyone in distress out at sea, they will go and rescue. Um, and they're a charity, which is wild to me. But they are a charity, and they used to raise money for them, and they got really, really popular, and they got picked up by a record producer and became recording artists. Recorded some sea shanties, and you know, they became platinum selling, recording artists, and they still tour the UK and sell out the UK, and their
Very cool.
story is very, very cool. They all still keep their real jobs, and they go off and have fun, and do big festivals like Glastonbury, or there's so many amazing plaudits that they've managed to achieve. But I played Rowan, who it's obviously fictionalized. They are fictionalized versions of these people.
Okay.
And yeah, and I think he had that character sort of had a subplot in the production that was resulted in a lot of tension because he had to sell the pub that the whole community used to hang out in, and it's a really, really important part of the community that he was potentially going to be giving up because of debts that were left by his late father. So there was lots of. So for me, it was a really nice, dramatic role. I didn't have to worry too much about singing too high or too full out, which was gorgeous. And I had a really educational time. For the most part, it was so much fun. But I think our director kept saying, UK touring is hard. It's really hard because your location changes every week. The
Hmm.
weeks that you work are long. You tend to sort of work from the afternoon on a Tuesday through till 11 p.m. and then two shows on a Wednesday, two shows on a Thursday, one day on a Friday, and
Wow.
then two shows on a Saturday, and then you'd be out. And then you'd be traveling to your next venue.
Hmm.
And so when you started the work week, it felt like a slog, and there were many times where morale was low, company morale was low, and really it's when negativity sort of surfaces, it kind of spreads, and people don't mean to be negative, but they can just find themselves sitting in that negativity, and it can be really
Hmm.
difficult to be around. And at one point, the director had to sort of come in and say to us, "Look, I know morale is low, but I never said this was going to be easy, and you need to just, practice some gratitude and suck it up, really." Which is what I needed to hear for sure. I needed to hear that because there were times where I was like, God, this is so difficult. Doing the show wasn't really an issue, but like feeling like that was the only thing I was doing and not getting to see the cities as much as I wanted to, or
Yeah.
like have the fun element of it, like the social aspect of it, was difficult. Um, but it was a special piece, and I never ever lost sight of that. I was so aware that the show was like magic. There was something about it that really, like, even like the biggest critics, the people that I know that
Huh.
are big critics, they would come and they would see it and they would say, "Got me, it's magic. There's something magical about it." And it's to do with having a really good book, a really heartfelt story, set in the community feel that makes you feel like you're a part of the community. There's also a love story in there, which always helps. But yeah, I really feel really proud to have been a part of it. Really proud.
Has the schedule actually? First of all, I listened to the cast recording of Fisherman's Friends yesterday, and it's really good. It's really good music.
I'm
It's
glad you enjoyed.
yeah. Um, but has that like grueling schedule been a part of the other tours that you've been on too? Have you felt the same,
I didn't feel the
level of?
same. No, I didn't. I didn't feel the same. The tours were shorter, so maybe that helped. Um, I also felt like we were doing seven show weeks instead of 8 show weeks, which we were doing the majority of the time in
Mm,
Fisherman's Friends. Um, and so that helped. A younger cast and a different time of my life, right? So like a time in my life where I filled up my spare time with things that were probably quite detrimental to my mental health, but
okay.
I found myself socializing and doing other things that were, not really good for me, but I didn't know that at the time. So so for me, being Fisherman's Friends is the first job I've done as a sober, mentally more stable and aware human being, and so it felt like I was dealing with those issues as opposed to finding other ways to not deal with those issues. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. So, um, do you think it's different to tour in the West End versus touring elsewhere? Because I know you've been to like Canada and Hong Kong, right, on tours, and Australia. So, what's it? Is there a difference that you've noticed?
Well, let me tell you, when you get to work abroad, it's the dream because you're being paid to see a part of the world that you might never have visited.
Huh.
I don't know that I would
Yeah.
have ever made the trip to Sydney or Melbourne. I don't know that that would have been in my life plan. I probably would have always assumed it was too far away or too expensive. And
Mm-hmm.
to be on a plane that you didn't pay for, to stay in an apartment with a rooftop pool and have your own apartment in a 5-star resort, you know, about half an hour walk away from the Sydney Opera House, it is just mind blowing, um, and truly, truly a gift and a pleasure. Uh, so I think touring internationally is can feel more exciting because you feel like a tourist, and so you
Okay.
feel like there are lots of things. You also get lots of perks, like you get per diems, and well, I mean, you get that in the UK as well. Oh no, you don't get per diems in the UK. You get per diems, which is extra cash in hand to spend on things that you want to spend on. So you get your salary.
Nice.
Um, so you would get your salary, and then you would get put up in your apartment. So you don't have to worry about that. And then you would get an extra cash injection every day or every week, to spend on whatever you wanted. So when I was in Australia, for 2 months, I didn't spend any of my salary, so that just stayed in my bank and just built up. And I spent on my PDs on food and tourist activities and all that stuff. So it felt,
Nice.
and if you're really savvy, you can save it up. You don't like. I remember when we were in Canada, we got per diems whilst we were there as well, and that was great to watch my little top drawer fill up with notes and sort of be like, I'm not going to spend anything. I'm not going to spend anything this week. I'm going to just be really sensible. And because it was 8 weeks, it felt like there was the odd week where I could treat it like I was at home. So I would do a weekly shop, and I would just live like I was at home and not be doing touristy stuff and just be sensible. And those weeks, you watch the money, build up, and then I exchanged it all to American dollars, and then after the job, I flew from Toronto to New York, and I spent a week in New York and used my PDs for
Nice.
spending money. Yeah, so it's not a nice little perk. Um, but for sure, it's really for me. I really enjoy working abroad. Um, Partly because of that reason, not always just money, but it's different surroundings. You feel like you're on holiday, and you're getting paid to be there. It's a joy, a
Mm-hmm.
total joy.
Did you while you were in New York and Canada? I know has some theater too. And have you did you go out and see shows? I assume you would in New York, but
So in Toronto, we couldn't because we had the same schedule as everyone else.
oh, okay.
So we could. We arrived the last week of Mean Girls, and I really wanted to see it, but they were sold out, so we couldn't even try and wangle a ticket. Um, and then Joseph opened, and we knew a lot of the cast of Joseph, but they came to see our dress rehearsal. But then they were by the time they were opening, we were already open, so we couldn't catch
Oh,
it. So that was a shame. I think Harry Potter was on at the same time. It probably is still on in Toronto. Maybe it's not. And we didn't get to see that either. I probably wouldn't have gone to see it because I've seen it a few times. But in New York, I absolutely saw a show every night. You bet you. I feel like over there it feels way more. For me, way more accessible. I know might sound wild because I know ticket prices over there are crazy expensive, but as a tourist,
yeah.
for me, like, I never spent more than that time. I never spent more than no. What was the most expensive ticket I bought? I think it was maybe Hades Town, and I think it was $70 a ticket. For
Okay.
me, that wasn't expensive comparatively to what I would spend in the West End, and every other show I
Huh.
saw was $40. Um, yeah, it's $40, right? Yeah, that's the yeah,
Yeah, I
um,
think that's about.
yeah, and I caught a lot of really great theatre out there, and I was super grateful. I think the cheapest show I saw was the piano lesson, which is wild. I think I paid $38 for that.
Huh.
Um, I know, and that had like Samuel L.
Yeah.
Jackson in it. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
It was
Yeah.
like wild. We were really, really, really grateful. We saw Kimberly Kimball. We saw Hadestown, the piano lesson. We saw a play called I can't remember what it was called, but yeah, I can't remember what it's called. I fell asleep. It wasn't my favorite thing I've ever seen, but I was glad to have seen it. Yeah, lots of good theatre for sure. And whenever I go to New York, that's what we base the trip around: is being able to see shows that we
Mm.
might not get over here.
Mm-hmm. Um, well, speaking of shows that, you mentioned earlier that when Book of Mormon came to the West End, it was super anticipated because it had done really well in the U.S. And
Hmm.
you were the first British person to play Elder Cunningham.
Mm.
And so, what was that like to be a trailblazer? I guess.
Like really special. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was the standby, but I still take that trophy and hold it high. Like as the standby, being the first British person still to play the role is really special. It was nerve wracking. Don't get me wrong. I was in the wings, and Hello had started for my first performance, and I was so nervous that I ran substage and vomited in a sink, and then ran back up and ran straight off stage and
Wow.
did my first entrance. Yeah, really nervous. Um, but worth it, worth it to say I played it and to be a lead in a huge West End show is something I've never done since. So it's really, really, I still feel really proud of myself for that.
Yeah, that's very very neat. That's something that I think a lot of young actors and probably some people listening to this, aspire to do is be a trailblazer in the industry.
Uh-huh. And for for most of my career, I feel lucky that I have done original productions, and I just haven't done. Mormon was the only one that wasn't an originating role, if that makes sense. I mean, there was the original
Mm-hmm.
London cast, but everything else I've done, I've sort of created from the ground up, which feels really special. But then it also felt strange to go into rehearsals for uh, for Mormon and have to do a replica, you know,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
that was the emphasis for the most part, which is fine. That's the way the machine works, Um, and I've been grateful since then. I've been able to just create stuff, and that feels really cool. And I think Eugenius was the closest we got to creating something that could have taken off, really taken off, and then it
Huh.
didn't. I'm waiting to originate a role that really takes off and stands on its own two feet. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
I want
definitely.
I want to create an Elphaba, I want to create, something that runs for years that I originated. That would be just, they're doing a revival of a show over here this year, which it's because it's been 10 years of a show that I did. And that feels weird to me that they're doing a revival of a show that I was in. I'm like, how has it been 10 years? It's wild. Like, time just flies. It really does. But but yeah, I feel like I've been really lucky to originate a lot of roles. And so it feels strange sometimes when you're in the room and the writer's not there or the original director's not there, and you're kind of just piecing it together. In fact, I don't really know what that feels like, because even then in Norman, I had Casey there and Matt and Trey and everyone was there. So I feel like, yeah, long may that continue, because it really suits me. I really, really enjoy it. I love being able to go up to the writer and say, "Would you mind if I change this line?" And for the most part, they're like, "Yeah, do what you want," or it goes through the channels and you make the decisions and you come up with the right way to say it. But that for me is just, it's so neat. I'm really grateful.
Cool. In the first episode of the podcast, which was almost a year ago, I talked to the actor who played Timon in the U.S. tour of The Lion King.
Right.
And we talked about how he, has to take the character of Timon, which is, made iconic by Nathan Lane in the movie, and sort of keep it the same, but differentiate it a little bit. So how did you do that with Elder Cunningham?
I had to find that a lot of the nuances myself, but there was a lot of expectation to do exactly what Jared did, um, beat for beat, and that is to be respectful to everyone else, but also to sort of make I'm not going to change the blocking. I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
do that. That's not what I'm about. But I think you just naturally, as an actor, you do just bring different energies to the things you do. Particularly, I would say in something like The Lion King, that really is, that puppetry, that everything has to be exactly the same. That
Yeah.
product has to be the same. But I think it was actually a bootleg or of something that I saw, maybe a YouTube clip or something of Ben Platt playing Elder Cunningham, that during my contract I was like, whoa, he's like singing it, like he's like vibrato, like giving it like full, I can belt here, I can sing. And so I
Mm.
changed what I did vocally, and I went from doing quite a thin kind of charactery belt to like a full contemporary vibrato, like all that stuff, to really get into it, because that for me felt more natural. And so I was able to sort of transition ever so slightly into a more fuller sound, um, because what I was singing didn't always match my speaking voice,
Okay.
and that should be such an emphasis, in what you do, is making sure they marry. But there's a whole like process with that show. I felt like I didn't really get to grips with how he should be played until I worked with um, Trey Parker, and he came in and worked with me and Ashley, who were the first covers for the leads, and we worked on the stage with him for like an hour, and he
Mm-hmm.
just gave us these really amazing little nuggets of information that really like made me, it just clicked, and I was like, oh, of course, yes. And the thing he said to me was
Huh.
happy puppy. He was like, think happy puppy every time, because like happy puppies are adorable, everyone loves them, but they can be really annoying, and so just be aware of that. And that for me, I never forgot it, and I was like, because I feel like naturally I could portray that, but
Mm-hmm.
knowing it definitely, I was like, oh, I know exactly how to do this. And so that was nice, because for a lot of the rehearsal process, I wasn't working with anyone. It was just me on my own,
Oh, really?
making sure I knew the blocking. Yeah, and it was only when we got, once we opened and did the press night and everything, that we finally got into actual rehearsals with the resident director. So it wasn't even with Casey or anyone. So I was really lucky to have worked with
Huh.
Trey and had that little brief chat. I also got to go on in rehearsals. We did on the final week of rehearsals. We did 3 days of an invited audience into the rehearsal room of like 30 people, to do the final run throughs before we went into technical rehearsals.
Mm-hmm.
And Jared got sick, and I was also sick. But Jared got sick, so then I had to go on in the rehearsals, and I wasn't ready because I hadn't had an actual rehearsal, so I just had to kind of
Mm.
wing it and just hope for the best and just let everyone steer me around and do it. And for latter day at the end, I didn't know the choreography. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. But it was just a rehearsal, so it was okay. But so having that little taste of what it feels like to be the standby and have that responsibility was really quite. It was quite daunting.
Yeah, I'd imagine that that would be the case. And
Mm.
um, certainly a part of being in any tour, I'd imagine, is, you know, taking notes from directors. And you have a line of notebooks on Amazon called "Just Take the Note."
I do.
Um,
I've got
so
I've got one just here. I've actually got a bunch of them right here. Yeah.
what inspired you to make them and to start selling them?
Okay, so I was creating these videos and they were doing really well, and I think that was the first time I ever started getting feedback from my peers that made me feel like I was onto something. Um, some really prolific characters, actors, writers in the industry started following me, DMing me, and I was like, this is wild. This is so wild. And that was the first time I ever was like, there's always a part of me that wanted to have something. It wasn't merch. It wasn't anything like that. That was never really
Mm-hmm.
my thing. I'm not really, that's not my niche. That's not my fan base is
Okay.
not that, you know? My fan
Sure.
base are my peers, and I love that. My fan base are not, like the Six fan base or the Mean Girls fan base, or they're not
Mm-hmm.
that. Maybe they will be one day. But right now they're my peers, and I kind of thought, how can I give back? And also, how can I earn a bit of extra cash, right? Because at the time I wasn't working. I was trying to just survive and try and get money from being a teacher and doing all these things that were creatively fulfilling for me. And yeah, I just thought to myself, notebooks are like, everyone needs one. Everyone needs one, whether you're an actor or
Mm-hmm.
not, and whether you're just a theatre fan or whether you're just an actor or a creative. Like, everyone needs to write their notes to something. And I just felt like just take the note was kind of a universal thing, and I put the ellipsis on it to be like, this is yours, this is the world's your oyster in this notebook.
Mm-hmm.
But actors and creatives within the industry will know that just take the note is a kind of thing that people say under their breath about people when they don't take the note that they're given.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people would like, just take the note. Just do it. Just take the note. And so I felt like it had a little double meaning. It was kind of niche but also broad. Um, but I didn't want it just to be like a normal blank notebook, and I didn't want it to be lined either because I wanted it to be creative. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted you to be able to draw if you wanted to, and so I just thought, right, I'll do some little doodles in it to encourage people to doodle, and then I thought, right, on every single page, I'm gonna do a quotation that is, from somebody in the creative industry that's just giving a little nugget of inspirational, advice or their insight, and it all came together. It took me bloody ages to format it all and get it all right for printing and everything. And it all came together, and I launched them, and it did really well for a month, and now I don't really sell any. I'm still plugging them, and they just will be always there. And if people want to buy one, they'll buy one. And I get a tiny
Mm-hmm.
kickback. I don't get a massive kickback financially from them. They cost £9.99. I think that translates in very many countries across the world. And I only see like a third of that. Like, I don't really see a lot of it.
Huh.
And again, I'm kind of transparent about that as well, because I don't want anybody thinking that I've put a price mark on there that means I get loads of money, because that's not the way it
Yeah.
was for me at all. Yeah,
Um. Yeah,
I
that's
am
very
super
neat.
proud of them.
And
I'm super proud of them, and I'm thinking of creating more. I, and I've got like an idea of. I think the inside may be the same. They may not. I might change the quotes and make them a little bit broader. But I'm thinking of doing more. And maybe I shouldn't tell you what the idea is in case anyone steals it. But yeah, I'm thinking of doing more, and doing some more designs. Yeah.
awesome. And your sketches about actors taking notes are really
Hmm.
funny too.
Thank
Um,
you.
and so you also have a wonderful voice. And for our listeners, really quick, with your permission, I would like to play a clip of you singing a duet with a pianist of the ABBA song "The Winner Takes It All," which you posted
Oh,
on Instagram
wow.
around a year ago, just so our listeners can get an idea of how amazing your voice is.
I don't wanna talk about things we've gone through, though it's hurting me. Now it's history. I've played all my cards, and that's what you've done too. Nothing more to say, no more ace to play. The winner takes it all, the loser standing small. Besides the victory, that's our destiny.
Yeah, that's very kind of you to say that, and also interesting that you chose uh, that clip. Um, singing for me is a strange one. Okay, I have to be really in the mood to sing. I know for the most part of my career, I've done musicals, right, and I want to do more plays and more straight theatre and television and all that stuff. Like wonderful, great, but in terms of like how I feel when I sing, I feel like I'm the most connected to what I'm doing. But I
Mm,
think the reason I'm really emotionally connected is because singing makes me feel the most vulnerable. Um,
okay.
I,
Huh.
I, I, I'm way less judgmental on my acting than I am my singing, and so I can listen to myself sing back, and I'm like, stop, please stop. I'm getting better at hearing myself back, and there are plenty of recordings out there of me that I am happy with and stuff, but I went through a period of trying to post things that were really unedited, or this was like before my old Instagram, before the pandemic, and I tried to be really like, guys, flaws and all, like, and really just like apologize for myself,
Mm.
and I don't do that anymore. Now I will post something I'm happy with, and if I listen back and I hate it, I'm like, no, you were happy with it before you posted it, so not much has changed apart from your perception of it. So just leave it. So I'm grateful for you sharing that. I wondered, of all the things you were going to play, that wouldn't have been on my top 10, I don't think,
Huh.
of things you were going to play. But yeah, I feel really scared of singing. I feel like yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I just feel really weird about it.
Well, I think also in musicals, a lot of what makes a character vulnerable is through the songs that they sing and what makes them relate to the audience the most. So
Hmm.
I, um,
And also,
yeah,
when
that
you do,
probably
yeah, sorry to interrupt. When you do something in
no,
a
no, no
show,
worries.
you when you do something in a show, you have rehearsals, so you have time to get it right into a place where you're happy to show it. Like I said before, um, where sometimes if I sing off the cuff and post it on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, I feel like I didn't rehearse this. I just sung, and I did it a couple
Mm-hmm.
times because I really enjoyed it, and I had the choice between two takes, and I chose that one. And um, sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes it's like put the phone down, belt your little bahookie off, and just have fun and spread that kind of joy. Because I feel like for me, it's also trying to find the joy again, and I've always had this in my career where I've been like terrified to sing anything that's not in a show, in the confines of a show. And so if it
Mm.
comes to a concert, I get really, really nervous, or if it comes to, posting it online because I feel compelled to, and then I get really nervous. And it's like, just lower the stakes, lower the stakes. There are people out there who can't really sing at all, who sing for the joy and post it, and it's a joy to watch because of that. And so I had to try and remind myself to do that.
Yeah, and so I think this is a nice lead into the next segment of the episode because in that audio clip, it's almost like your British accent like disappears. You sound American, and
Yeah.
so I like to play a game in the episode with all of my guests.
Yeah.
So in this game, which I will call accents, I'm going to give you an accent, and you are
Okay.
going to repeat this line back to me in that accent. And this is
You know,
just
I
the
might never work again after this. I might never work again. Okay.
So the line I just sort of came up with because all these words you can pronounce in different ways. So
Okay.
it's the tomato and the pecan are in the boulevard.
The tomato and the pecan are in the boulevard. Okay. Okay.
All right. All right. So we'll start off slow with a proper British accent.
Okay. The tomato and the pecan are in the boulevard.
Awesome. And then Australian.
Uh, uh, the tomato and the pecan are in the boulevard. Are in the boulevard. I don't know.
It sounded good to me. All right, and then let's do like a Los Angeles, like Western American accent.
Okay. The tomato and the pecan are in the boulevard.
That's so accurate. And then we'll do New York,
Uh, the tomato and the pecan are in the boulevard.
and then because of Fisherman Friends, let's hear it like a sailor.
Like Cornish.
Yeah.
Um, okay. The tomato. Oh my God, I don't think I can say it. The tomato. I can't say it. I can't get my head around. I've never had to say the word tomato in the Cornish accent. The tomato. um, the tomato and the pecan are in the boulevard. The tomato and the pecan are in the boulevard. Something like
That
that.
sounds good to me.
Bloody hell. That's hard.
Yeah, I mean, you did great. Better than I could do.
That was good fun. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So now let's dive into some questions sent in by a couple of our listeners.
Hmm.
This is from Gemma, and she says, "What is your favorite theater or improv game?"
My favorite theatre or improv game? Uh, Probably the one where you have to go into the middle of the room and just pull the things out the bag and just say what they are, and keep
Mm-hmm.
pulling them out until you freeze for like more than a couple of seconds, and then someone else has to come in and save you. Because I always inevitably end up saying the word cheese multiple times. That's my default thing. I'll always come back to, and I don't even eat cheese. Do you know what I mean? Like it's bizarre,
Mm-hmm.
but cheese is always the thing I come back to. But that's the one that I think really frees you up and gets you just to really say the first thing that comes to your head, and it's maybe the first experience because it's very direct of being able to understand what improvising can feel like.
Huh. Yeah. I could see that. That is a fun game. I played it before, and
Yeah,
it's difficult.
it's a good exercise. It's a really good exercise in just freeing your mind and just knowing that you can just say whatever the hell you want. You get permission to
Hmm.
just say whatever the hell you want. Who's to judge you for what you pull out the bag? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then another listener asked, "Have you ever auditioned or performed in the United States?"
No, I haven't. I did get an offer um, to do something at 54 Below,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
and I couldn't do it, which was a real shame. Um, but yeah, no, I've never auditioned over there. Yeah, no, I've never auditioned over there or
Is
performed.
that something that you would like to do at some
Yeah,
point?
I mean, yeah, I'd love to. I had a taste of it in Toronto in terms of the equity and how they work with people, how the different departments how they differ, the departments differ, sorry, in the States, and how the responsibilities of each department are slightly different. And so
Mm-hmm.
there are different expectations over there, and everything can feel a lot stricter, but it's just different. And so I'd love to experience that, on or off Broadway, or in anywhere like LA, wherever. Like, um, I would be interested in, of course, yeah. And like I said before, it goes back to me saying before about working abroad. Feels like you're on holiday, and it feels like a real privilege to be able to do that.
Cool. And then the last segment of the episode, which I is where I ask three questions, and I ask these three questions to every guest, and
Hmm.
they're a little bit more trivial. And so first off is, what is your favorite musical?
Oh, right. Listen, it's tied. There are three. Can I
All
say
right,
three?
let's hear them. Of course.
Parade, original Broadway cast recording. I have to go by the albums, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sideshow, original cast recording, and Dogfight.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah. I was listening to. It's funny you mentioned Parade because I was listening to that the other day, and it's
It has to
super
be the
fun.
original version, though. It has to. I don't love the changes. I don't love the Don
Hmm.
Mar version. I don't love the Don Mar changes. I feel passionately enough about it. I wrote my dissertation in my final year of college, um, on the differences
Oh,
and
really?
how I felt like the differences did not serve the piece.
That's
Like
awesome.
I feel very passionately about it, but I don't think that the original version will ever be shown again. I think the only thing that's licensable is the abridged version, as I would
Huh.
define it. Um,
Interesting.
yeah.
The second question is, what actor did you look up to as a kid and why?
Uh, for reasons not really to do with the skill, because I didn't really understand the skill until I was about 18. But Ewan McGregor,
Oh,
because
yeah.
he's from close enough to me where I am in the UK, and I thought that if a Scottish man could make it in Hollywood, um, from relatively humble beginnings, then so could I. And that was the way I thought about it when I was younger. So I'll always come back to that. And actually, I have a picture. I met him. My dad arranged a meet and greet for him when I saw him in Guys and Dolls in the West End. I'm going to show you, even though your listeners can't see it, but you can. I keep it up in my room because it reminds me of where where I've you know
Oh, that's awesome.
just reminds me, of being able to just, I don't know, like gives me a little reminder of who I used to be and the passion that I used to have as a kid. And
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, so I keep that up, and I had it for years, and actually I've only in the past couple of years put it up and displayed it because it's something to be proud of. Is to have been inspired enough by an actor to have that moment. And yeah, I have no doubt that we're going to
Definitely.
cross paths, and I'm going to show him that picture. I'm going to be like, "Do you remember meeting me?" Yeah, so I would say Ewan McGregor, but it wasn't because I thought he was the best actor in the world. It's because I loved him as a person, and I loved his
Mm-hmm.
career trajectory. I do think he's very talented, by the way. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't look at it. I didn't look at him and go, "Oh, I just wish I could act like that," you know.
Mm-hmm. And the final question of the Theater Threes is, what advice do you have for theater kids or anyone wanting to get into the industry?
Uh, do it, do it because you love it, and try not to forget that. Uh, if you're lucky enough to have a support network around you that doesn't say no, then absolutely keep pursuing it until you get to a fork in the road. And whether that fork tells you that you should do something else or whether you should continue, you'll know in the moment. And you can cross every bridge when you get to it. I've known many actors who have stopped working professionally and have moved on to other things that are more stable for them, that are more career driven in a different way, and they're just as happy as they were when they were performing, and they've just chosen a different path. And you're never a failure, or you're never, it was never a waste to train, to work hard, to do the thing that you love if you end up doing something else. So for a lot of people, they're obsessed with it for so long, and eventually they do get to that crossroads where they go, or that fork in the road where they go, I'm going to take this other path, and they're worried about how that might look. But it's never something to be embarrassed about. And I think, and if you do continue on the path, keep on that path. Keep doing everything you can creatively to fulfill you. Work. If you have to have a survival job, work in something that fulfills you. Keep yourself motivated and inspired, and try not to lose the inspiration, and try not to let the bitterness that you can sometimes feel because you want it for yourself, try not to let that jade your perception on other people's talent and abilities, because for the most part, everyone is very loving and supporting.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for your insights. It was absolutely lovely getting to talk to you. And
you. Thank you so much for having me on, Nate. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining me, Dan. It was an absolute pleasure. You can follow him on Instagram and TikTok at Dan Buckley Actor, and can purchase his notebooks at the link in the description. Again, thank you so much, Dan, and thank you all for listening. TheatreQs is produced by Nate Wiley Productions and me, Nathaniel Wiley, featuring music by Joyheads. Joyheads is a Pasadena-based music group composed of Juan Gomez, Daniel Johnson, and Jeremy King. The song that you heard in this episode is A Real Good Time. If you like what you hear on the podcast, follow the podcast and check out our website, natewileyproductions.com, for a wide variety of content, from historical series to photo galleries and much, much more.